This is Blind Ham News with stories of interest to blind and visually impaired hams. With today's report, here is Steve Bauer, W0QA.
Well, this is Blind Ham News Podcast number 6. And this time we're kind of dealing with two topics. I have another interesting callsign story that we'll share with you. And have you ever been involved in amateur radio at the point where you stopped being involved and you took a break and then you came back? Well, we'll have a story about one ham who did just that. Now we've got Larry K7GND. He's going to talk about his ham radio call signs and how he got the call sign that he has today.
This is K7GND, and this is a history of my call signs. When I was a 14-year-old teenager in about 1965, I got my first ham license, a novice, which was issued to me WN6RAZ. I thought, this is a cool call sign, Raz. Well, back then, you're only good for 1 year. You could not get a second novice. And because of discovering girls and peer pressure and all that, I did not upgrade, so I lost my license. About 5 years later, I decided to get another novice, because by then the FCC had changed the rules where you could get a second novice. And I was issued the call sign WN6TWR. Well, this is a really cool call sign, abbreviation for tower. Maybe someday I'll have one. But then, because of having a new daughter and trying to put bread on the table and all that, I did not upgrade from there. And in 1984 or so, I decided to upgrade, and I was issued the call sign KA6GND. I thought, wow, abbreviation for ground. Now, this is really cool. I'm a lucky guy because I could have got a crummy call sign. And after that, I stayed very, very active ever since then. And when I upgraded to advanced and then to extra, I decided to hang on to the call sign I had and not take the chance of getting some weird call sign. So I had that for many years. And when we moved here 5 years ago to Oregon from Northern California, I checked the database, because I like GND, but I also like the number in our call sign to represent what part of the country we're in. And sure enough, K7GND was available, so I applied for the vanity call and got this call sign I have, and I plan on taking this to my grave. So that's my call sign story, and I'm sticking to it. Best of 73, y'all. This is K7GND.
And this time we're kind of dealing with a subject that, well, it has many twists to it. People who got into the hobby, left it, and then came back. The idea for this series came from Joel, W0CAS.
Hello, Steve. This is W0CAS, Joel in Pelzer, South Carolina, with an idea for a Blind Ham News series. Think about all the hams that have taken a break for a few years and got back into the amateur radio hobby. Question would be, why did you leave? Why did you come back? How long were you gone?
Hi there, it's WB2KTV, Steve from New York. And I got into the hobby in '69, but I left it in the early '90s. I let my license expire because I wasn't doing anything with it, and I was not really interested in spending any more money on the hobby. I had lost connection with everybody I knew that was in the hobby because I moved, and so did all my old friends. So I was stuck in UHF and VHF land for a long time. But I decided that I wasn't going to do anything with it. I lived in an apartment in New York City. I lived in several apartments in New York City. Couldn't put any antennas up. Then I was retired from my place of employment in 2006. And you know what? A week after that, I had to study again and take the tech test again, which I did up at Columbia University. They had a nice station up there. And I took the tech test, and I got back into it. Then, last year, in 2023, I found out that if I filled out the paperwork, I could be grandfathered back in to the license class that I had back in the early 90s, which was a general. So I hooked up with some fellas way out west. As a matter of fact, they were in Alaska. And I filled out the paperwork, and presto changeo, I became a general again. It was pretty neat. And now I'm working on studying for my extra. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it, but we shall see. And that's my story of how I lost my license and got back into the hobby.
Well, thanks, Steve. It was a great story. Do you have a story about getting into ham radio and then stepping away and coming back? If so, share it with us. We'd like to share it with other podcast listeners.
Have a story or information to submit for the podcast? Send it by email to blindhamnews@gmail.com or call 662-426-6397. That's 662-HAM-NEWS. Thanks for your help.
I'm Steve W0QA, and that's the report this time. I hope you can join me again for another Blind Ham News podcast. 73, and thanks for listening.